All right, hi everyone. Thank you for coming to our session today. I know that we were supposed to have this 2 weeks ago, but things happen. That's totally okay, and I'm really happy that we were able to reschedule this one. So I'm really excited for this because I've been really good friends with this person for a while. Really happy to be working alongside her in many different arenas, and so I'm really excited for today's presentation on environmental justice and how you all can use your voices to engage and advocate to our local government officials. And so with that, I'll pass it over to our guest speaker today, Jasmine Lee from Third City Coalition.
Hi everyone, it's so nice to be here with you all today. As William mentioned, my name is Jasmine Lee. I'm the Managing Director at Third City Coalition. Just a show of hands, anyone familiar with Third City Coalition? Ever heard of it before? Pat? No, haven't. Alyssa, all right. Maybe not. All right. So I'll just give a little bit of background about me. I'm Jasmine. I'm a born and raised Stocktonian. I grew up here in Stockton. Left for a little while to explore my career, and then came back in 2014 and came back with adult eyes, really looking at the community that I grew up in and that raised me differently. Really wanting to understand what I could do as a young person returning home to make an impact here and make a difference. I had some friends who were also doing that at the same time, so it was a really inspiring time to be a young adult, and just like it is now. And there's a lot of transition that was underway back then, and just like it is now. So. Third City Coalition is a nonprofit organization. We're based in downtown Stockton. We've done a lot of work around building relationships with members of the community, with nonprofit leaders, with local government leaders, to try to understand the civic issues that are plaguing our community and how we can put residents in the driver's seat of redesigning our communities. And so, for the last 6 years, that's what I have done. I have led that work with a team of volunteers mostly, up until recently, until we started getting investments coming in. And we've done that through a number of different programs, including the Transformative Climate Communities program, which you all are part of. So I was one of the partners that worked on the initial planning grant for that program. That has ultimately led to the implementation investments that you all are learning about and engaging with the community about. So, I got my start though mostly in transportation planning. I'm not an urban planner by trade. I studied economics, and then I went into the private sector, and I worked in finance and sales and a lot of different things not related to government or planning. But when I came back home, actually I got involved with a group called the Healthy Neighborhoods Collaborative, that Jonathan is part of, and I started to learn about these issues, these major public health issues, and I started to learn about the venues that our community has to have conversations about these things. And most of them are held within local government. At the time, there weren't a lot of spaces for organizing with residents around these issues. And really there were a couple of different opportunities where residents could participate, and one was the general plan update. Anybody ever heard of the general plan or what that is? Pat, what's the general plan?
That's where you have a big pie and it shows where all the money goes, and there's this little spot that says homeless.
Okay, that's probably true. I understand what you're talking about. You're talking about the presentation that the city made about how they were going to address the general plan, and what that issue was a small part of the pie.
Right.
So the general plan, essentially what it is it's a plan for a 20-year horizon usually. It says in 2040, what are the policies that the city needs to take into consideration to get to this future vision of what the city could and should be. And so there was there's always continual work that the city is doing to implement that. But during certain periods of time, they'll actually have a specific effort where they'll engage with the community about what do they want to see in that 20-year horizon, right? And so I came back to Stockton at a time where the city was actually looking at and having conversation with the community about what do they want to see. And so that took a couple of years. And then through that, I actually got more involved with these local planning efforts. One of the other ones was the regional transportation plan process. And so what that looks like is the whole county, not just the city of Stockton, but the whole county. What are the similar to the general plan, it looks at a long period horizon, and it says like, what are the investments we need to make into our transportation system? So as a resident, without the background in this, this was very formative to me, and most of the work that Third City Coalition has been involved in has been related to transportation. So when William and Alyssa came to me and said, we want to talk about civic engagement and how it intersects with environmental justice, for me, the easiest way that I can kind of speak about this is through transportation and through that lens. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. So before I move forward too much, I just want to take a pause and see if anyone has any questions about what I've shared already, because I feel like I've shared a lot already, but if not, yeah.
I have a question. I went to an agency not too long ago, and they talked about the new like BART coming through here, and then they talked about some software called Link. And I was just wondering if you had anything to, or knowledge, or had anything to do with that, because I even thought about connecting William or finding out who we connect with them that did that presentation, because they had people about all that to be transportation to eliminate pollution.
Yeah, no, the commuting, so Valley Link, I think that's the project you're talking about, is a capital improvement project. So a big infrastructure investment in transportation, where they're looking at connecting BART to our area in a way that allows us to get buses there and have other forms of mass transit that would get there. And it's kind of like, it goes a little bit out of the way that we would normally think, right? Like we normally, if we're going to the Bay Area, we drive over the Altamont, right? We drive over that huge giant hill. From a civil engineering perspective, that's not super feasible, right? So they had to re-envision how could they make a link to the valley. And so what they're doing instead is they're extending the track north of the Altamont, up near, I want to say up near Discovery Bay area. Don't quote me on it. But up near the northern part of where the Altamont is, so that's the connection point. So it'll be kind of near between Tracy and Stockton. It'll be just east of that. So that was their way of figuring out a way to do that. And yeah, the purpose is that prior to that, I mean, currently, if you want to go to the Bay Area, you're looking at minimum 2 hours traffic during like a normal day. And think of how many, you multiply that by, I think before the pandemic, I heard that there were almost 80,000 people commuting every day to the Bay Area from the valley. You multiply that by, and then you think about, some of those folks might be driving electric cars, but not all of them. That's a lot of pollution. And pollution has no borders, as I don't know if all of you have had a session on air quality, but air pollution doesn't have borders. And we also have a thing called the Delta Breeze, and so a lot of that pollution comes in. So any opportunities like that to get people out of the car and into mass transit, I'm not like super plugged into the project, but I know that that's generally what that's about. And what you're describing is actually, it's a way to address environmental justice needs, right? So the folks who are commuting may not be necessarily environmental justice communities or folks who are experiencing the most burden, but the harm happens down the line, right? So they're looking at upstream investments. Does that make sense? We're looking at how can we create interventions so that folks who are experiencing the most harm from environmental racism and injustice get some sort of relief. So yeah, that's a good question. Thanks for bringing that up. Any other questions?
Just a quick comment, Jasmine. They have received, I'm on camera. They have received trainings on air quality pollution. We did have SJ Cog come speak about transportation.
Okay.
And then if there's any
So all
other
the different
issues you want
lanes
to
today.
a little bit, yeah, it's definitely different lanes. So I just want to make sure, like, you can definitely do a crash course on transportation, but we don't have to do a deep dive
Okay,
as we did before,
cool.
unless they ask questions.
Yeah, I mean, I just kind of want to talk about it from from a resident's perspective today. So,
Perfect.
I don't know if you can see this super well, but really, when it comes to any kind of justice issues, the question really is, who are you listening to? Who benefits from the decisions that are being made? And are the people who have experienced the most harm from these issues, where are they in the rooms when decisions are being made? And that's what, I mean, have you all gotten in like a textbook definition of environmental justice yet?
Kind of, sort of, yes, no?
Kind of, sort of, yes, no. I mean, hope I'm not going to butcher it, so sorry for the folks on camera if I get it wrong. I'll come back and correct myself. But essentially, environmental justice is about ensuring that there's access from those who are most harmed to have the ability to participate in the process. And for us at Third City Coalition, I think for a lot of us who are in this work, it's really about removing barriers and eliminating the barriers, making it more equitable for folks who would otherwise not be able to participate to do so. And ensuring, and for me, that looks like engaging at the intersection of all these different players and stakeholders who are making decisions and reminding them that it's their responsibility to ensure that environmental justice communities are heard in the decision-making process. And that has been the role that we have played with SJCOG and other organizations like the city and so on. So I just kind of wanted to make sure that we talked a little bit about the justice lens of this work. So today we're going to talk a little bit about transportation justice, at least from the community perspective. I really want to talk about ways that you can participate in this process and then do some practice. And that may or may not feel super comfortable, but I think we're going to have fun no matter what. So yeah, just let's have fun with it. And we can turn the cameras off for that part because it might be a little bit awkward to be filmed during this part because you all are going to practice today.
I would actually say that really quick, Jasmine. They have had themselves recorded doing improvisational speaking.
Oh, that's right.
So,
Y'all did public speaking practice, right?
I'll leave it up
so
to
if you're
them. I will leave it
comfortable.
up to them
If
if they
you're
want to
comfortable.
be filmed or not. But yeah, you all have discretion. If you don't want to be filmed, let Jonathan know, and
Yeah.
he'll turn the camera off when it's time.
And they were really good at it.
But I will say, y'all were really
I know
good
you're
at it.
great. I've
No,
seen you
wasn't.
in making public comments.
I got poked in the side with some.
You might have been poked on the
You were-
side, and yet you landed on your feet. So
So, yeah, so what is transportation justice? I have a sentence here, it's all interconnected. Does anyone know what I mean by that? Does anyone want to share? What do you think I mean when I say what is transportation justice and it's all interconnected? What does that mean to you?
I would guess it means that all forms of transportation are like accessible to all communities, basically.
Yeah.
Like, it all lines up everything.
Yeah. That's great. Does anyone else interpret it differently? Or want to expand on that? Okay, can everybody tell me your names too? What was your name?
I'm Damaris.
Damaris?
Yeah.
Nice to meet you. So before you speak, if you can say your name so that way I know who you are and I don't have to be like, hey, you. That'd be great. Thank you.
And then my name is Rain Romeo.
Rain, nice to meet you. Rain Romeo.
Yes.
Oh, got it. Do you want to add on or how do you see it?
I also agree with her that it's all connected in a way, and I do believe like the transportation system is like in a way because especially for example railroads, like they all have a location they have to get to, and then when you're done with for example, is it RTD? RTD, thank you. There's different pathways for it, and when you're done, like for example, when you have to go to school, I know a lot of people use the buses for school, and there's just so many pathways you can use, and I feel like they all interconnect with one another.
Mhm.
So, like I agree how like the system is, yeah, they all intersect.
Yeah. Anybody else want to take an interpretation of it? What it also means to me is transportation justice is very much interconnected and interrelated with environmental justice. The types of transportation that we make available in our community dictates the environmental impacts of that transportation, that form of transportation. If we don't have active ways that people can walk and bike, and the only way that people can get around is in a car, there's a lot of potentially folks left out of that and potentially harmed by that, right? And so what I mean by it's all interconnected is like transportation justice is environmental justice, is economic justice, is racial justice, is social justice. All of these things are totally connected, and it's up to us as residents to make those connections real for folks so that they can understand when we don't have reliable, frequent public transportation in our neighborhoods that we can walk to, who gets left out? Who can't get to work? Who has to pay extra? All these questions, right? And it's really up to us to make that link for folks so that they know. Because sometimes the folks that are working in these spaces, they're not from our communities, they don't know what's going on at the neighborhood level, and it's up to residents, really. Unfortunately, the burden shouldn't fall on us, but it does. And so that's what I mean by that. Any questions or thoughts about this? I really want this to go.
So there's a new thing coming out with these electric cars where they're gonna park them in certain spots so we can use them for $4 an hour. As a senior, as cold and hot as we get in the valley, as a disabled senior, especially when it comes to walking, my truck is an older truck, although it passes as smog. For me to go from where they're thinking about putting these charging stations with these electric cars is a hike, you know? And so, I was like, how am I supposed to get to this car to do my share of solution and not problem if it's not feasible for me to get there?
Yeah.
So am I supposed to get in my car, start it up, drive over to the electric car, use that one all day long, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I was giving them solutions because I live in this triangle of where the stations could be, and I live right there. You know, and they're not 2 block triangles.
Yeah. Well, the thing that's challenging, right? The thing that's challenging is folks who are making these planning decisions. If folks don't participate and show up and say, hey, I'm a potential user of this service, and I live in this neighborhood, which is like, you know, just outside of what's walkable for me, in every direction, they need that kind of input. And also, I think they're also, you know, from an advocacy perspective, there needs to be greater investment just across the board. We know that. The project that you're talking about, I think it's the project that we're part of, the Stockton Mobility Collective project, where we're looking at bringing, with SJCOG, bringing electric cars, electric car sharing services, electric bike sharing, right? And that's the kind of feedback that they need. And the great news is that typically when government agencies and private partners who team up to deliver these projects, they typically don't have a dedicated investment from the project team to go out and talk to the community, which seems wild, right? Like, how could they just roll out a program without actually checking with the community about how this is done? This is a new way of doing things in California. Even when we had progressive, you know, people who were investing in these types of services, they weren't doing it in this way. And it's because of advocates across the state who have said, no more using our public money and public investments to perpetuate harm in our communities, or miss the mark, essentially. Like, miss the mark on what Pat's talking about, right? Like, I'm not gonna actually be able to use it because it's just outside of this area. And there's a whole host of reasons why they're looking at certain locations. And so we have, as community members, we also have to understand that. But then it's on them, it's us to say those things, and it's on them to figure out, okay, how can we further reduce the barrier? Can we get bikes at those stations so that you could ride a bike to and from your house? Something like that. Yeah. That's a good point. It's a good point.
Yeah, but here, no offense to Stockton, but where I live, I have a bike. I have a 3-wheel bike. I could ride my bike to that car so I could go to the north side, because anything that I want to shop at is 12 miles away. And my bike might not be there when I get back.
Yeah.
And so that's the other factor.
Safety is a real issue. Safety is a real issue.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we have to bring these concerns up and we have to work together to solve them. We're not going to be able to just find I don't like this term, but like, I don't know of a better way, the silver bullet, right? Like the one solution that's going to make it perfect for all of us. That doesn't exist. But we can try to work together to find better solutions. And it really begins with us raising our voice about what we need. So, okay, the other thing I wanted to talk about a little bit is this idea of complete streets. So I don't know if you can all see this all very well, but complete streets, it goes back to what you were talking about, Dominique, like this idea that we build for everyone, we build for all these different types of modes of transportation. And so, number one, it's like looking at physical, this is just an example of, and I want to share like the way of thinking really is complete thinking. So transit stops, lighting, transit stops address issues around mobility for folks that maybe have mobility issues, needing a space to take a break or take a rest, and having some sort of shade or some sort of shelter while they're waiting. Number two, lighting. A lot of people in our community, one of the things with transportation is and with being walking or biking, is around safety, and lighting can make a huge difference of whether you feel safe or not to walk or bike. Curb ramps, again, going back to accessibility for folks that maybe, well, really for anyone, but especially for folks who may be using like wheelchairs or other types of mobility supports, curb ramps, making it possible for folks to easily get up onto the sidewalks. Number four, signals and crossings. This is a big one, especially in areas where, anyone familiar with the idea of safe routes to school? Anybody familiar with that concept, safe routes to school? It's about for kids who walk to school. A lot of kids have to walk. Their parents have to go to work early. They're walking, right? How are we making sure that we're thinking of them, right? Not everyone's parents have the day off. Like most working families have two parents at work by the time kids are going to school. So how are we making it so that kids can easily get to and from school? Safety, crosswalks and lights and areas where they can push the button and make it safely across make a huge difference in whether or not they have these the ability to get to and from school or just to and from their destination safely. Number five, landscaping. I think you all maybe have talked a little bit about this idea of greenery and urban greening on our streets, especially in, I think about the worst case that I think about in our city is on Airport Way in South Stockton. Yeah. And I say the worst case not because it's a worse place or anything, but because it's the most egregious example I can think of lack of shade structure, lack of greenery around an industrial area where there's also residents, where there's also schools. So, green, we all know trees clean the air, plants clean the air, and we need those. And yeah, I think of that, and also a lot of parts of downtown where there's just no trees. So landscaping is also part of complete streets. Number six, bike lanes. We have a real opportunity here. Biking in this city is not super safe, not because people who are biking aren't safe, but because the infrastructure isn't safe. Painting a strip on a sidewalk is not enough. We need protected bike lanes that are their own, that cars don't go in. Pershing Avenue. Anybody seen Pershing Avenue where they turned that right lane into a bike lane? That's not safe. Sorry, City of Stockton. I love you guys.
So we have one that's
and they know this, and our city folks know this, and they're working on trying to get there, but it takes time, money, participation, And that's hard, it takes time.
We have one that they're working on called California Diet, and it goes from Oak Park all the way down California past the swap meet to El Dorado. Apparently they don't have enough money to complete it.
Yes.
And the bids went out, prior, but I guess cost of living and everything else went up. And we also had money for the Vine Street crosswalk, which we've been waiting for forever for people with mental health challenges. And because there's not enough money now in that.
On California Street, you mean?
On California Street.
Yeah.
It's not even in the making yet.
Well, so one of the things, so Minor Avenue, we'll just take a moment. Minor Avenue, you all know Minor Avenue is part of the TCC project, right? You all know that?
Yeah.
Have you been down Minor Avenue since it got remodeled? Yeah? Did you have a question, or are we gonna say, yeah, you've been? Okay, Minor Avenue, can you guess how many years it took to get all the funding to complete Minor Avenue? Not to complete it, just to get the money to start it.
To do the turnabout.
To do the roundabout, to do the whole project. How many years do you think it took? It took, I want to say, 8 years. 8 years to get the funding. I think they started collecting the funding in 2014, when I first moved back home.
Was it, I was thinking, was it both of Michael's terms that got that started?
Well, let's not get political.
I think what happened in 2014, so it's a good question. In 2014, the San Joaquin Council of Governments was, I want to say, I don't know if it was the first year they were mandated to make, the plan that I was telling you about earlier, the Regional Transportation Plan, Sustainable Community Strategy, the legislature required that councils of governments, also called, sorry for all the acronyms, Metropolitan Planning Organizations, that's their technical term, it's a Metropolitan Planning Organization. Ours is the San Joaquin Council of Governments. The legislature mandated that they design these regional transportation plans. And I want to say the first year they did this in our area was in 2014. And so it's a good point. I think that was right around when a lot of young people started coming back and just people started to get more engaged in what's going on and so yeah, I think that was a big, I wouldn't say that, I don't know exactly what his role was in it, but I know that at that point he was on city council, and I think he was on the council of governments board at one point. So it's possible, right? Like it's possible that they started to think differently about how should our cities look and what investments should we make and how should we make them? Not just fixing all the potholes, but how can we be better? How can we do that better? And that would require more funding potentially, more coordination, which takes more time. So I just say all that to say that it's not gonna happen overnight, right? But it's really about looking at the big picture, what's the vision we're painting, and how are we working together to advocate for that. And TCC actually supported that project with I think it was $1 million that got put into that project, and it was the final piece to get it to where it needed to be so that it could be implemented. And here we are, it's done. And it's beautiful, and people can walk on the sidewalks, there's bike lanes, there's parking, there's a road diet, as you said. And California Street is next. I am aware that California Street is the next one that they want to work on. But again, it's going to take time. And it takes multiple rounds of funding that they have to apply for grants to get the funding to do it. So, because the city budget doesn't allocate for it, which is a whole nother conversation for another day. So yeah, bike lanes and sidewalks. I'm going to keep us moving. I just kind of wanted to have this conversation about transportation justice and really looking at it from what does it look like on the ground? Because a lot of these concepts probably feel really abstract until you can really see okay, how does it look in real life? And what's the process that it takes to get there? So the next part of our time is really looking at ways to participate. And something I want to tell you all, some of this content comes from a document that we published last year, Third City Coalition, we published. It's called the Stockton Gov Guide. You can look it up at any time. If you just search Stockton Gov Guide, it should come up on Google. But it has a whole bunch of information. Basically, my team, I had a couple of Climate Action Corps fellows. Anybody familiar with the Climate Action Corps Fellowship? No? If not, it's a great AmeriCorps fellowship. You should consider it. They came in and I was onboarding them to my team, and they said, and I was telling them all about, the different stakeholders we work with, the San Joaquin County and the city of Stockton, and they were like, how are we gonna know all this information? We should share this. And so we put together a guide and we shared that with the community. And so you can actually go in and take a look at it. It covers, what is the city of Stockton? What departments are part of that? How do I engage with them? Why does it matter? And same for San Joaquin County and a number of other things. So check that out. But this comes from that. There's a whole section on how to participate with local government, and that's what we're going to talk about today. So I want to talk about two things, two ways that you can get involved and make a huge difference, not just on transportation, but really any issue. And today, when we're practicing, you can choose whatever issue you want. You can make up an issue, and you can apply this knowledge however you like. But we're going to talk about two different ways to kind of be involved. So public meetings. So the importance of attending a public meeting is really to make a connection with your elected officials and tell them your story. Not just a compelling story, but your story, your lived experience, and why you as their constituent feel so strongly about this issue and why they should listen to you and what your concerns are, really. And there are a number of public meetings that take place all the time in our community. A lot of times people only think about the city council. But can anyone tell me where else public meetings happen? What other public meetings take place?
Mayor's Task Force for People with Disabilities.
Great, that's a commission. What else?
Planning Commission.
Planning Commission, another
Parks and
commission,
Recreation.
part of the city of Stockton. What else?
Parks and Recreation.
Parks and Rec, what is that? They have like a commission or something?
Yeah, Parks and Recreation,
Committee?
like planning, it's right underneath planning.
That's a department. Public meetings, so spaces where they have an agenda. They have an agenda, there's elected officials or appointed officials at these committees.
Kim
Or
Wormley
meetings?
sees over the Parks and Recreation.
Kim Wormsley's over that.
Yeah.
Today's her birthday too. Happy birthday, Queen Kim.
That's recorded. Water advisory,
Yeah.
There's so many, right? There's the San Joaquin County Board of Supervisors. They hold public meetings.
They know me.
There's the San Joaquin Regional Transit District. They hold public meetings. There's water board agencies that hold public meetings. Go
Is
ahead.
there like a school?
Yes.
School boards
NUSD.
hold public
Oh,
meetings.
yeah.
All
Yeah,
the
so
school
there's
boards, there's like
school
4 or
boards.
5 school boards in our area. They all hold public meetings,
Yep.
right? This is where decisions happen in our community. And for all of us, when we think about where do public meetings happen, all of us, we think of the city council. But there are a lot of other people involved in making decisions about how our community is run and managed. And I'm going to tell you right now, they do this with very limited public participation. There are typically a handful, at most, of people who attend public meetings. There's a number of reasons why. We're all busy. We're all basically trying to survive, right? But there are so many different ways that you can have an impact. And I think what I want to share today is you don't have to be going to all of them. It's really unrealistic to expect that you could even attend the big ones, right? The city council meeting and the board of supervisors meeting every week. That's a lot. It's a lot. Trust me, when you go into those meetings, it's a lot to take in. As a resident, it's very bureaucratic. They don't speak the language of community in those spaces. And so decompressing from those meetings can be a lot and takes time to just even get caught up with the language that they use. And so I say all of that to say, I would encourage you all to think about what are the ones that have the most impact on your life. The issues that are affecting you as a community member, as a resident, what are those meetings that are taking place, or what are the agencies, for example? And you can learn about this in the Gov Guide. You can learn about what these agencies are, what they do, and start to go on their websites and say, okay, like the transit district is the one that determines what time the bus comes. And the bus is really screwing me up right now. I can't get to my bus in time, or I can't get to my bus. There isn't a bus in my neighborhood. And this isn't just for you all too, this is for the residents that you're engaging with as ambassadors for this program. So what's really important is, I think, for all of you who are participating in this program, is to get real familiar with who are the agencies that make decisions in our community. What are they making decisions about? And how can I direct folks or be an advocate and show up at those spaces to make my voice heard and talk about what my concerns are and not be afraid to do this, because that's what it's going to take to make change. Unfortunately, we all have to step out of our comfort zone to do that. So, any questions on public meetings?
So, just like in summary, you go to these meetings and you state your what you want to change in your community, right? And for them to make that a change, do you have to go like to multiple meetings to address that that thing that you want, or is it like you just tell them, oh, I want like a stop sign in my street? Do they do it right away, like,
Yeah.
or do they like plan it?
Yeah, it's a good point you make. So to expand on your question, sometimes there are agenda items, right? There's an item on the agenda that the council members or the body, whatever the body is going to discuss that may relate exactly to your concern. They might be saying, we're looking at this particular route. Let's say the transit district, picking on them a little bit. Let's say they're looking at Route 40, and Route 40 is the one that goes all the way from Hammer Lane down to the downtown transit center up Pacific Avenue, right? And I, as a resident, want 5 minutes. Every 5 minutes, I want a bus coming. Dream world, right? Like that would be so great, right? You could easily get up to all the like main places. You get downtown to Hammer Lane like really fast. You get to the mall. Yeah, you get to In-N-Out, right? Right in front of In-N-Out. That's great. And I want it to happen every 5 minutes. It might be on the agenda, like Route 40 or specific route information. They might be having that on the agenda that time, that day, and I may go to influence that, and I may make a public comment to influence that agenda item. There's also, at every public meeting, it's part of a rule that they have public comment, meaning that's the space for items not on the agenda, where you could talk about really anything you want. And yeah, you can talk about anything you want. You can say whatever you want with that time. However, I have learned that it's best to go in numbers. So it's best to not show up alone. So if you have something very important that you want to bring to light, it's best to do it with a big group. And it's best to show up multiple times. And that's how often in places like Stockton, that's how change happens, because people get tired of hearing the same folks all the time, and they'll want to try to figure something out.
So then, how would I get on the agenda? What do you have to do to get it?
There's a couple of ways that items make it to the agenda. One, the mayor's office can put anything, or the chair usually of that board can put anything on the agenda at any time. They typically work with staff, right? So whoever's in charge, the city manager or the administrator, to determine what goes on the agenda, because they don't want to have a 3-day meeting, right? They can't put everything on every agenda, but they'll typically work with the staff to figure out what goes on the agenda. The other way is, I'm pretty sure, like a group, you have to look at each board's rules, but each board, there's usually a way that a number of, if the chair will not put something on an item or an item on an agenda, you can talk with multiple members and they can jointly put an item on the agenda. But it takes that, and other than that, run for office. That's the only way decisions get made. Well, it's the main way. The other way is if you wanted to like let's say you wanted to make a big change, you wanted to provide funding for parks and libraries, parks and recreation and libraries, right? You're not getting anywhere with the elected officials. They're not interested in raising the taxes. They're not gonna do that. They're elected officials, right? They're not gonna take responsibility for a tax measure necessarily. Residents can band together and create what's called a ballot measure. And what that does is it puts it on the ballot and it allows the residents to vote. So that's another way. Ballot measures are another way you can get items on an agenda or policy enacted. I got 3 hands. Whoever wants to go first.
So there's also another way, if you guys are shy, there's always like the city and stuff, you can always send in an email. You have to have it in an hour and a half before the county board on Tuesday morning, so it's best to do it on Monday nights. And city council by, I think, 2 o'clock. If you go on their website, it says email form, and so then they read it in the meeting. So I know some of you have heard me express this, that 3 minutes really does count. Because number 1, it's on record. Number 2, they can't hide it. Okay, so Victory Park area, they came in, about 20 of them one night, and they all talked about that road that goes like that, and I came in for something else. I said, you know, I don't live there, but I'll second it, because I feel like George Jetson when I come off the freeway.
Yeah.
They started working on it.
Yeah.
The bottom line is, if you don't bring it to their attention, the majority of them don't know about this stuff, you know. But I impressed. 3 minutes is a valuable 3 minutes. But I just wanted to, you know, AAC with the San Joaquin College with the transportation mobility. Like this is their presentation, this was their report and stuff like that. So even if you don't go, you sign up to go to the meeting, they send you agendas, and then they send you minutes. And then when you see the agenda, when you see minutes, it says when the next meeting is, then you can go down there. But again, a lot of us on Zoom, you can watch the recordings on 97, on our local cable channel 97. We'll show you all the city hall meetings. You can go on the San Joaquin Board of Supervisors. You can look for an agenda, it's a video. You can watch that 8-hour, 10-hour process that they go through sometimes. And you can do a public comment, and then you can also do another comment that directs the issue that you want to do. So you can get 3 or 4 comments in there if there's 3 or 4 things on there that you want to address.
Yeah, you can touch on multiple issues. And yeah, written comments are also another way you can make an impact. And we'll get to that in just a second too. So it's not always, you don't always have to go in person. I'm not going to lie, when I first came back home and the first time I went to the podium at the city council meeting, I was shaking. I was so nervous, and it's not easy.
Who need to be aware of the issues, but English is not their first language, so I'm really proud of you guys for taking a step forward to learn how to public speak, because the more of us that go and speak out for the communities, they have to be accountable to that.
Yeah.
And I was just gonna ask, for when we speak over there, right, is professionalism, like language, is it necessary? Because I know a lot of people have to meet that, I have to meet that. So I have to word things a certain way in order for people to actually listen to me, or do I have to talk, like just write where I need to write and say what I need to say?
Yeah. I used to struggle with this all the time too, because especially in the planning world, there's a lot of jargon and technical language, and I used to be really like self-critical of like, well, is that gonna like make sense? Are they gonna take me seriously? Are they gonna understand what I mean? Like, and what I will say to you is, don't let that stop you from saying what you need to say, because they'll understand, and they'll understand. Someone on their team will understand what you're trying to say. For you, I think show up as you are. That's what's most important. Be authentic, and being there and showing up and saying, you know, making your comments heard is more important than that. But I understand what you mean, and that's why I say it's really great to find groups of others who can work with you on these issues, or who can provide that kind of support. That's how I learned, was we formed community. We built community around these issues, and it was all unpaid, volunteer, and totally like on us as residents to figure it out, and you will develop over time. And that's what's important too. There's opportunity to grow. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So let me just give you a prime example of craziness, okay? So I walk up, it's Thanksgiving, right, and I go to the Board of Supervisors, and they know me, because I'm a chair on the Behavioral Health Board, which is another one. It's what we don't have in our county. If you think there needs to be some mental health or drug addressing stuff, come to our board. It's the third Wednesday at 1212 California. I'm also the vice chair on the Housing Authority. So if you have a housing issue, you come to the board, right? I went up and I said, good morning, everybody. And I said, Thanksgiving's coming. Oh, turkey smelling, pies all over, twinkle bells, kids running, family hugging, and the homeless aren't. And I walked away.
Yeah, that's powerful.
And one of the county supervisors at Christmas time at their open house, go to their open house, meet them at Christmas time, said to me, you know, Pat, if you don't come and tell us, and he means all of you too, if you don't come and tell us what's going on out there, we don't know. Because he's from that city, he's from that end of town, he's from that city, you know what I mean? And so it's really powerful for every one of you in your community, especially in the Spanish-speaking community and the Tagalog-speaking communities. It's important to get them involved in your communities, because we on the south side, we're the stepchild. You know, let's take care of this side, and this one's just going to have to deal with it, right? And so if you don't go and you don't voice this, what your mom and dad went through, what your grandma and grandpa went through, what your little brother and sister, with the trucks in our neighborhood, we can't breathe, right? If you don't voice it, they don't get it.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's, yeah, we want leaders who do get it, but also they're volunteers as well in a lot of ways. Like, most of them aren't paid to do this. They maybe get a stipend, but they're not full-time, right? So to your point, like, not all of them are
Exposed.
able to be everywhere all the time. William, you want one? You got one. For you, Jonathan. All right, so,
Sorry, I have to head out a little bit. I just
Okay.
wanted to ask something. Is there like somewhere you can reference to, like, assuming I'm a community member that isn't involved in this type of work, is there somewhere I can go and it tells me all the community meetings that happen and stuff?
so that does not exist yet.
What was the question?
Is there a repository of all the public meetings and the agendas and everything? Doesn't exist yet.
That's a good idea.
But if you go
Have
to,
been working on that.
Wow.
if you go to the county website, you go to the
It's
city website.
Really hard. It's really hard. I've been working on it though.
Yeah, because I know it's also difficult on how each public meeting works.
Each different jurisdiction has their own like website for where they post these agendas, and it's very labor intensive, and it's by design that there's all these different institutions
Yeah, and something I found is
to
like,
keep us disorganized.
yeah, so
We gotta
you
get
can't
organized.
even attend them because you have to like register ahead of time at a certain date on a certain time, and the link is only open for like an hour or something, like a day, and it's just
Yeah.
not really
Well,
accessible.
city, like at the local government level, it's less like that. State, for sure, it's like that because they try to keep a controlled environment. Good question.
And you know
We're
what?
working on something. It's really, yeah, I'll tell you more about it.
Tomorrow morning, I'm driving to Sacramento for CDCR, which is California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation, because they have their every 3 months, and because of COVID, they weren't being consistent. And I just finally got a hold of the secretary and said, listen, I want to know when your meetings are and when your agenda, since COVID's now over. So
Yeah.
tomorrow, I'm going to go up and do my 3 minutes, because injustice in the criminal system with our inmates, you know, they are victims first of some kind of biological, environmental, or traumatic event before they become inmates.
Yeah.
And so, being
Yeah, it
that,
doesn't start there.
yeah.
Thank you for saying that.
I'm going to Sacramento
That's
to do
great.
my 3 minutes.
Pat, you are an inspiration. You are truly, I'm serious. I've seen you speak for so long now at meetings, and I appreciate you. It's important.
It's important.
It's important.
You're young, you get a whole lifetime of doing
Okay,
it.
so in your hands, I want to I know we only have a couple more minutes. And so we probably aren't going to be able to practice today if you all have to leave. But public comments are a tool for public input. They can, as Pat and I said earlier, they can be spoken or read at meetings. They go into the official record, And so it's on the record that someone spoke up about this particular issue or this particular concern. And that's important for if you ever have to get into any kind of more legal fight about an issue, it's important that you have it on the record. It's a way that you can navigate the next steps of that process. And also, as Pat said, you know, it's a way to grab attention. If you have a way with words and you can paint a story or you can like get someone's attention that way, it can be very powerful. It can be very powerful. I've seen it happen. So in front of you is a template for making public comments. This is available on our website. I was really hoping we would have some time to practice this, but it's okay.
I think
We
still
can.
Do we have time? Okay.
Yeah, we have time.
Okay.
Yeah,
So we'll pause here, and then I want to just say one more thing about committees and commissions, and then we'll pause to practice. So as we were talking about earlier, there's all kinds of different commissions and committees that you can either sign up to be part of or get appointed to. This is another venue for you to provide your input and show leadership in the community. And it's a great way if you are thinking about potentially running for office or if you ever wanted to do that. Service on a committee or commission can prepare you for the navigating the bureaucratic environment that exists in our reality. And it also gives you an opportunity to provide input on priorities. So there's every year the city clerk and the different jurisdictions, they'll put out a notice about the different public commissions that are either looking for members. Some of those commissions have specific requirements, like you have to live in a certain neighborhood or you have to live in a certain district to serve on those committees, or you have to have a certain type of professional background to serve on those committees. Like some of the committees have that requirement, like the Civil Commission, I know they have, which deals with HR at the city. There's certain requirements around that. Like you can't be a city employee to be on the Civil Commission. Makes sense, right? So I would highly encourage you all to do that research, get on the city clerk's distribution list, or if you, as in your work, are coming across residents who should be on these committees, making sure that you make the connection for them so that they can serve on these committees. Because it's really important, and as Pat was just saying earlier, like some of these folks who are sitting on these boards, they don't get the input that they need. And so commissions and committees are another way to do that and help support in that regard. Okay, so that brings me to the end of my presentation. We'll do any final questions, and then, yeah, let's take some time to practice.
I just want to say one more comment and I'll leave it alone, but also you guys remember Assembly Member Carlos Dupadois and Senator Susan Eggman, their offices are here in town. You can make appointments with the senator and assembly person. Go there and discuss your issue with their staff. You probably won't run into them, but with their staff so that they can be aware of it. You know, that's another form of letting our community know, hey, you got to act on this.
Yeah.
Well, one of the cool things in being in Stockton is the fact that because we're the biggest city in the county, everything in county and other, like, for instance, the senators and the assembly members, their hubs are going to be in Stockton. It's just, I mean, we have over 20,000 people. So we're the biggest city. You have to have the sort resources available to appeal to those people. And so think about if you were in Manteca, or think about if you were in Lathrop, or think about if you were in Tracy, having to travel just to say like, hey, it's not something where I have to have a call. I have to have an appointment with someone. I mean, that's crazy. Whereas here, we're in Stockton, so we have to like really, we're privileged, but we also have to be very, take advantage of it, because sometimes
Utilize it.
you utilize as much as possible.
Yeah. Okay.
I have to head out, but I just wanted to say thank you for the information. It's a lot. I've been meaning to have a conversation with you, and if you need help with that, I would be interested.
Okay. Thanks. Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, you know where to find me.
Yes.
I'll
I see you 3 times a
Talk
week.
with you about it. Yeah.
So what's the website was Stockton, or what was for your website? It was
Stockton.
Stockton.
Oh, if you go on our website, it's thirdcity.co, and then it's Stockton-gov-guide.
Just search it up on Google.
You can
Stockton
just search
Gov
it on
Guide.
Google. If you just search Stockton Gov Guide, one word, Gov Guide, G-O-V Guide, you'll find it. And I'll make sure that Alyssa and William have it, and they can send it to you all too.
It's very good. I think out of all things, I've read papers and paper. I'm telling you, this is, I wish I had this when I was in high school.
I want
I
to
wish I had it.
Third City. How did Third City get its name and start?
How did we get our name and start?
That's what I want to know.
Well, I told you about our start earlier.
Well, yeah.
But the name, so what does the name mean? So, any guesses before I say? Does anyone know what Third City is?
Third worst city or something.
Worst city, no.
Because we're sisters.
The best city, no, no. That's a good question. I mean, it's a fair guess. No. I've had that too. Did you say third world? Yeah, no.
No, because we're sisters.
It's
with
a more
somebody.
historical start. So during the gold rush, when the Chinese came to California, Stockton was the third city that they came to. And they called it San Fao, which literally translates to third city. San Francisco was the first city. Most of the time, a lot of the diplomats, merchants, folks who were real connected stayed in San Francisco. And then they would move along from the ships to Sacramento, second city. And more folks would, settle there. But the majority of folks, laborers, people who built our railroads, people who built our agricultural systems, people who mined for gold, they came here to Stockton, the third city. And it's a historical fact about Stockton, it's a historical name for Stockton, but for me, when we founded the organization, it was really an homage to the real history of Stockton, and really looking beyond what's at the surface level of our history, and looking at the real people who built what is the 11th largest city in California, in the 5th largest economy in the world. And really owning that power and taking our seat at the table to basically own our role in the mega region, in that San Francisco, Sacramento, Stockton mega region. That powers a huge economy and has millions of people living in it.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So it's about navigating that and honoring that history.
Oh, okay.
Hey,
Oh, okay.
did you get my message? Are you going to just take the bus, or?
Do you think we should do like templates? So you have a lot of other
I really like this website.
SUSD. Okay.
Yeah, spread the word.
I want.
Yeah.
I want. That's really local kids, right? Because buses. They have a different schedule. They usually.
What are you gonna write about Pat?
I ain't writing about nothing. I already speak at the RTD meetings and the AAC meetings.
Period.
I think I could make the rest.
All right. Yeah, click in and go for it. You're going to be the chair.
Yeah, you can go up to the podium.
William is the chair of the meeting, by the way.
Can I go first?
Yes, go for it.
I'm going to be talking to SUSD.
Okay.
Thank you for the opportunity to comment on today's agenda. My name is Reina Pacheco and I live on the south side of Stockton. I have 3 nephews that attend Van Buren Elementary School, and I'm here today to to ask for more programs to be included at Van Buren. I feel like there's not a lot of support for the kids. It's one of the elementary schools that have been forgotten because it's in the south side and it's in the most disadvantaged communities, and I would like that to change. I want more tutors in the school. I want more activities to be given to the students, like soccer tournaments or I don't know, programs that can help our kids achieve greater and for them to have a better education and to further their education and go to college. So, yes, I would like that to change. Thank you.
Nice work. I forgot to also say, so typically, thank you for your great comments. It's always hard to go first. What they'll do usually is you'll have a card that you put in with your name and the issue you're speaking on, whether you're speaking on public comment or a particular agenda item, and then they'll read your name. So just as an FYI.
And they won't respond to you.
And they won't
Legally,
respond.
they are not allowed to respond to
Yeah,
you.
they will never respond during public comment, and they are not allowed to interrupt you at all. And if they interrupt you, you should tell the clerk that you want your time back, that you want more time, because they're not allowed to interrupt you. Okay, good job. I forgot also to time it, so give me a second, I'm gonna grab my phone.
I will address to the City Council, and thank you for this opportunity to comment on road safety. My name is Rosina Pacheco, and I live in Southside, and I know a lot of people will agree with me that the roads here are not the safest at all. Either for walking, I have walked to school for the first 3 years of high school, and it is very dangerous. There has been times where I've almost gotten ran over, and I feel like there should be more, not only for people who are walking, people who are on bikes, but also when you're driving. I feel like it as a whole is just very dangerous, and I would like to see more road bumps and more stop signs. And I know that there's a lot of lights that are also not working, and I don't see nobody trying to fix them. And I feel like that just adds on to the pile of non-safety that is on Stockton. So, thank you.
And I am an advocate for our side. We are underserved and we are without services, and our infrastructure is absolutely horrible. You want to know what services you need down there to encourage people to ride the bus and to stop putting pollution by driving their own cars. Our population brings their mothers, their fathers, their sisters, their brothers from a different country. They do not know how to drive. They go to work, their family members are babysitting. They get a call from school and says, hey, little Joey needs to come home. What are they supposed to do, right? Oh, they're going to catch a bus. So they need to catch a bus and they need to go to the hospital because mom and dad would have to come home from work. Loss of pay right there, okay? Number one. Number two, I was watching a woman and her child sitting on the sidewalk the other day. They were sitting on the curb. We don't have benches with awnings over it. We have heat, 107 these days lately. We are cold during the winter, and yet we have no covers on our seats. We need to have South Stockton routes looked at, and we need to find a way to get to clinics and hospitals more often, and that's what I have to say.
All right, our final two, who wants to go first?
Good afternoon, board members. My name is Rebellion Johnson, concerned citizen, as well as a person who has nephews, nieces, and cousins within this district. And for myself, I'd like to speak on the issue of agenda item 14.1, which is the grand jury report. Personally, myself, looking at seeing that we even have generations that are coming behind us, obviously there's a necessity to show care for them as well, which is one of the reasons why I'm here. But for me personally, it's raising concerns around the misappropriations of funds as well as the high turnovers that are consistent with the performance rates of our schools. Seeing that the board has made multiple staff cuts this year in the name of budgetary saving, and then seeing that we're still on the way toward a $30 million deficit definitely raises flags to me, considering that this will already continue stripping resources and opportunities that are bare in the community, which means that we'll also be perpetuating the cycle of poverty. Right now, as it sits, only 2 schools out of the whole city rank on par with standards, meaning that most of our students, whether they live on the south side or north side, most parents are choosing to bus their students out of the district. Me, myself, had the same experience during high school, having to go 2 hours, waking up at 4 in the morning, getting back home at 6 at night. So seeing that this is also something that is going to continue affecting the people behind us, I think this is something that we definitely need to take a look at with the community, and not just as the board, the egotistical folks who have been doing this themselves.
Okay.
morning, Chair and trustees. Thank you for the opportunity for me to comment on Bus Route 44. I am Valerie Silva, a resident of Stockton, a student in the Stockton Unified School District, and an active user of RTD's bus services. These are reasons why I am present and stating my concerns with the impacts the services have on me and my community. I am writing in support of the addition of another bus stop near the neighborhood of Little John Creek. The reasons why I advocate for this bus stop adding is because the closest one to our neighborhood is by the PG&E building on, what's it called? That's right. Frontage Road. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. The journey from Little John Creek to the PG&E building, the bus stop 44, is a near 20-minute walk, which is far too much for those who have mobility issues and those who have trouble with time management. I'm concerned with the walk to bus stop 44 from Little John Creek because there's not complete sidewalks from Little John Creek to the PG&E building. There is a dangerous creek and we are almost there is a bike lane painted on the road, but we are still in the way of some cars and we will always watch out. There is also not proper crosswalks painted on parts we need to cross for the blocks on the way back. I am also concerned because there is not an actual bus stop at Bench bus stop with shade or anything, and there's not even the schedule on the bus stop with paper with any of the schedules. We have to go on our phones, and not everybody has their phones. So the main reason why that I advocate for bus stop 44 being added in the Little John Creek neighborhood is because it would greatly improve our ability to get to work, school, downtown on time, and it will lessen the burden it has on our bodies through the heat, through the cold, and through moving in general. Sincerely, Valerie Silva, and thank you for your time.
And know who you're speaking to, know what actions you're asking for, or what commitments you're asking for, and yeah, make your voice heard. And you all did that tonight, and I appreciate it. And if you ever want to connect, reach out to me. I'll give you my business card. Thank you for having me tonight. It was really great to meet all of you, and I'm so just on a personal note. I've been involved in the Transformative Climate Communities program since the planning grant days, and for me, this program, the Climate Leaders Forum program, was really important to me because it was the first time residents were going to be compensated for their time to think about and care about these issues. And I know that you all have been learning a lot through this process, but the city and the partners who are implementing these projects, they have an opportunity to learn from you as well. And so I thank you for you all making the decision to be part of this and making the time commitment. It's very important, and I just can't wait to see what else you do next. So thanks for having me.
All right, round of applause for Jasmine. Thank you everyone for coming, for attending tonight. For those who were unable to attend, I hope you enjoyed and learned from this from today's session. Just a quick announcement: I will be sending out the recording of this session and the surveys probably Friday morning, right, Jonathan? If you're gonna editing, yeah. So give Jonathan some time to edit the video down, and then we'll also try to send it out as fast as I can. And then as part of that, I will include in the assignment of the survey to do your own public comment again. So I'll be sharing out the public comment template that Jasmine sent out to us, and so that way the folks who weren't able to attend, they can also get practice writing public comments. But I encourage all of you who did attend to also write a new round of public comments as well, and then that way you can, apply that to the real world if you would like. And then with that, as always, we have our special question to make sure that you all were paying attention. So Jasmine, how many years have you been working at Third City for? 6 years. So remember that. How many years did Jasmine Lee work at Third City? 6 years. All right, and that concludes today's presentation. Thank you.
Oh, that's right, what color shirt